What's going on, everybody? Back at you with another episode of Quarantine Football. Like always, I'm your co-host Ryan with you guys today, sitting down, talking football. Like always, I got my good old co-host Nate with us today. What's going on, Nate? How's your day been, man?
My day's been pretty good. We were actually Nate the weatherman back at you guys. So we were supposed to have some thunderstorms today. Didn't happen so far, which is always a good thing. It's been pretty clear. Went for a hike this morning. That was nice. Always good to get outside, get
Big
on your
big
feet.
nature guy.
Yeah, of course. Always out in nature.
I need to
Except
see.
when I'm
I need to
not.
see your special guest make the appearance on the camera, Nate. And you know who I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
I need to see him.
we got
Okay,
Carlos
we
every
got
episode. Loyal fan,
We
Carlos the
got we
Aloe
got
plant.
we got good old Carlos with us today, but we're not here because of Carlos. Today we're doing a special episode since it is Father's Day. I got my very own stepdad Adam on the show with us today, diehard Steelers fan. What's going on, Adam? How you doing, man?
Doing very well. Ryan, Nate, this is very exciting. I listen to your show daily, passionately. I talk to all my friends about it. I send out letters. I send out uh, pigeons and tell everyone. This is very exciting, a moment I've been waiting for my entire life. So this fulfills my bucket list. And thank you very much for asking me to be here.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Adam, like I said, guys, he's my stepdad. He's been a diehard fan of the show since day one, since we started from the my good old bedroom, sitting in my bed talking NFL. So it's awesome to have you on, being able to talk about the Steelers. Adam grew up as a Steelers fan. He's very passionate about them. Fond memory. Well, I wouldn't say a fond memory, but a memory of the Steelers that I have watching with Adam was the Patriots Steelers game about 2 years ago when Jesse James, quote unquote, dropped the ball. And I was watching with Adam, and I don't think I've ever seen Adam get that mad about a football game in my life. I don't know if I know you've watched the Super Bowls from this past decade, but have you ever been that mad about a Steelers game before?
That one was tough. I do remember when the year is going to escape me, but when the Dallas Cowboys beat the Steelers in the Super
Oh,
Bowl,
I remember that.
and I was surrounded by friends who were rooting for the Cowboys, and I was just crushed. All the food after that tasted like dirt. Water didn't have any flavor. Nothing was good after that for at least a month and a half. That was one of the most painful games I've ever seen. That Jesse James won, I had forgotten about. Unfortunately, now I will not sleep tonight thinking about it. And I'll just have to think about the way Roethlisberger was able to steal back the victory against the Colts that led to them going to the Super Bowl after Bettis fumbled in almost the end zone. That I'll have to think about to replace that Jesse James memory now.
Yeah, I mean that Jesse James caught that ball. A lot of people will disagree. Some will agree with me, but that was definitely a very very prominent memory in my head about watching Steelers games with you. But I'm gonna hop right into what we want to talk about today. We just wanted to hear your overall thoughts on the Steelers this upcoming season. Obviously, in the draft they drafted Chase Claypool, the wide receiver out of Notre Dame. That was a pick I was a big fan of. I talked about that on the show. And then, they have Roethlisberger coming back from injury. They got Deontay Johnson and Juju now, and their defense is arguably a top 5 defense in the league. What do you think about the Steelers this upcoming season? You see the Steelers being a sleeper team for the playoffs, or do you see the Steelers being more of a bottom 10 team in the league this year?
I do see them as a non-playoff team, and I'll break it down 3 parts. I do like the defense. Fitzpatrick's amazing. I think their safeties are quality. Their line is good as well. But their offense, and I watched the last 2 years, just cannot seem to score enough points that allow them to win the games. They can stay in the games, but too many times the offense struggles, and then the other team comes down and scores the game-winning touchdown or field goal last second. So I have gone over the schedule many times. I don't see them better than a 7-9 at best. And if so, I'm hoping they do that or worse, because as bad as 2020 has been, I just want a first-round draft pick quarterback to move on.
Yeah.
I think Roethlisberger is okay. He's 38, which in football years is about 80. And I mean, the backups, Devin, the Duck Hodges, and and Rudolph, and now they signed Paxton Lynch, and they got Barrett, Ohio State guy. Interesting and all, but I don't think the quarterback is going to do any. I don't think Rosberg can last to get sacked once. And no, I'm not very optimistic about the season at all.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Nate, go ahead.
Yeah, the quarterback situation last year was definitely pretty dismal, and I would point out also that their wide receivers were subpar at best. Not much separation going on. They certainly didn't make it easy on Devlin Hodges or on Mason Rudolph for that matter. Even someone who a lot of people were expecting to have like another huge season in Juju, clearly didn't have that breakout season that a lot of people expected. Someone that I would look to in terms of development, progress, and like somewhat of like hope for that offense this year is James Washington. James Washington, he actually started to go off towards the end of last year. He really did. He had a couple games where he had just huge catches game after game after game in the last, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks. And that's someone where if he can develop and he can actually become a solid weapon for that team, and if we get bounce back from Juju, I think that would be that would make that offense at least competent enough to lead like a 9-7, maybe a wild card push. You know.
Man, James Washington is so overrated, man. Every year in fantasy football, it's like, oh, sleepers, James Washington, and he just never he's always like below wide receiver 3 status. Like I've always stayed away from him. I feel like it's gonna be the same with Deontay Johnson this year. People are like, oh, last year, he was good with like limited catches. He was burning quarterback. This year, now that they got Claypool and Juju and Roethlisberger coming back, Johnson fantasy sleeper. I just don't see that being the case. It was like kind of the same with Juju, where everyone was covering Antonio Brown, so Juju was able to get those yards, touchdowns, and catches. I feel like it'll kind of end up being the same. Now that teams saw that Juju can't really be a wide receiver 1, at least at least from last year. I just don't know with some of those receivers. I think Juju, he's more of a 2 slot guy. I think he's not really a true wide receiver 1. Showed it last year. Not having AB. We've seen this in other cases too. One situation I think of is Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey when they were on the Bears together. Alshon Jeffrey was really good when he had Brandon Marshall with him because all the quarterbacks they can't double team both of them, so they were mainly covering Marshall, and Alshon Jeffrey had a really good year. Marshall left and Jeffrey kind of fell off. So I really don't know. If Roethlisberger somehow had like a really good year, I don't think he will. I think he's done after this year, in my opinion. But I just don't know with their offense. I agree with Adam on this. I just think their offense is shaky. I don't think Juju's really a true wide receiver 1, and I don't think Washington or Johnson are really like all that special, in my opinion.
Well,
I can't fathom Roethlisberger being able to survive 3 or 4 games, and without a stud quarterback throwing the ball. I don't care what wide receivers are out there. Juju, I think, is a good wide receiver, and I do like the draft of Claypool, but you still got to get the ball to them. And I'm sure we'll get to the fact that I think the running back crew is subpar. All the defense is going to just cut. They're going to double team Juju. They're going to let him throw it to the other guys, and running backs are not going to get anywhere. It's not going to be the Connor. It's going to wind up being Samuels again, or Snell, or they're going to bring back. They're going to bring in somebody to try and be a running back for this team, and the team just doesn't have enough playmakers. They can bring in Eric Ebron as all these big name tight ends that they want. It's just not going to work.
yeah, I was just about to get into the running backs, ask how you guys felt, but obviously I just got a nice glimpse into what your opinion is on that running back crew. Personally, I really don't like it either. I do not think that they're very promising for this year. One guy that I really didn't like was Benny Snell. Last year, Benny Snell looked like one of the worst running backs I've seen get starting time in the NFL. He literally looked like he was running with like steel blocks on his feet sometimes. He looked like he couldn't get out. He couldn't get off the line of scrimmage at all. He's supposed to be more of like a bruiser kind of back, but he wasn't like fast enough to actually get yards downhill before the defense converged on him. That just didn't go well. I don't think that Connor has the firepower, especially coming out of injury, to bring this team to where they need to be in terms of running backs. And like you said, I think they're definitely going to need to bring someone in this offseason. They're probably going to bring in a new quarterback, and with that, they should probably bring in a new running back too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
It's I said I was a big fan of Connor when he was when Le'Veon was there, and the excitement over the fact that he overcame cancer and he was a quality fit-in back. But when Le'Veon left and Connor had a substitute, you saw it. He was just a pound and run kind of player. He just took too many hits, too many leg hits, the way they tackle in the NFL, and eventually he just couldn't stay on the field, and now there's nobody. It's Connor who's a number two, and then as you said, Snell and Samuels are just like practice squad kind of players. They are just not quality, and they're not NFL running backs, and they are not going to be able to do the job. Even though they brought another Watt player, if the Watt brother, it's not going to be enough for this team.
Good old Derek Watt.
Hey, they may be the best looking set of trio brothers in the NFL. But still, the running back crew on the Steelers are just well below par and is not a playoff running back team.
Yeah, I mean, with James Conner, when I remember the year when Le'Veon held out for the rest of the season, and James Conner was actually really good for at least the first half of that season. He was I remember in fantasy, he was a top 3 running back and just going off. But the thing with him, with a lot of the successful running backs, Nate and I have talked about this. We see McCaffrey, we see Barkley, we see Kamara, we see Elliott. The thing with those 4 running backs is they have multiple aspects of their game. They're able to catch the ball, and they could they could truck through guys. They could get those big runs. I feel like with James Conner, he's the ground and pound running back. That's really it. He's just he's one dimensional that after those first 8 games where you replaced Le'Veon, teams started to really pick up on what he would do when the ball was handed him. He's just gonna run right at you. So I feel teams were easily able to game plan against James Conner. And then, like we mentioned, the injuries with the leg injuries and also the concussion, that's what's going to happen when you're a running back like that. So I think, if Connor's able to add the aspect of, catching it out of the backfield, and we've seen that, in games he's played, not I wouldn't say as much as we'd like to, but, if he's able to add that to his game, I feel like he could be successful, but I just don't know if he will. And it's just that type of running back, at least now, exception Derrick Henry, we don't really see in the NFL now. And I think that really is why Connor is not as successful as some of these other top tier running backs,
Absolutely. And again, but he wasn't drafted to be a starting running back. It was supposed to be Bell for years. So the Steelers, unfortunately, Bell really just destroyed them when he wanted to leave and hold out. And of course, the loss of AB, the team they are now showing what happened. They would still had Bell and Brown, and now this team is, you take away 2 of the best players in the game, and they said you'll get a 7-9, 6-10 kind of team. You can't just suddenly be a great team continuously without these star studs.
Yeah, and they really leaned on those guys too. For a while, they were really leaning heavily on Bell and Brown, and honestly, they were leaning heavily on the O-line too. But those guys are starting to age now. I can't really think of a scenario where they can quickly rebuild this. Eventually it's gonna come down to a full rebuild where they have an aging quarterback, they don't have the running back talent, they don't have the wide receiver talent unless they really develop quickly. And the offensive line is really, I think it's been a bright spot for them for many years now, but those guys are all getting old. I think of David DeCastro, someone, Marquise Pouncey. I think they brought in Stefan Wisniewski, Alejandro Villanueva. Those are all guys that they've been good and they are good, but they're getting old. And for a rebuild to continue, they're going to have to retool that too. So I was wondering, what do you guys think is what should be the plan, the logical approach for them in this year's draft, next year's draft, free agency? What kind of positions do you think they need to knock out?
I'll let Adam go first.
All right, so I'm just gonna lay it out again. I'm hoping for I'm not hoping for it, but I'm expecting a very poor season. So I am expecting a higher draft pick this year.
Yeah.
They need a quarterback. Bottom line, they do need somebody. Roethlisberger is not going to, again, 38. I don't see him being a Brett Favre playing a 43. He is going to be done probably the end of this season. I can't imagine wanting to play for a team that's so bad. So I'm going to say a quarterback. I think their defense will continue to hold this team, and like they can go out and get the Fitzpatrick kind of caliber players if they're still, because all these players certainly wanted to leave these other teams. So you get Fitzpatrick, guys like Fitzpatrick coming in. Steelers doing free agency that they're very unusual that they've never really done before, and now you got to start getting some offensive weapons. And if you get a quarterback 1 year, and then you keep doing as Nate said, the filling in the offensive line, get some youth in there, and then next year you need to get a running back, and hope that of these young wide receivers they have, the Washingtons, the Claypools, Jujus, that somebody really starts to stand up and be that number one they need, so that they can then get maybe another free agent or draft a good slot guy, number two guy, number three.
Yeah, I mean, with the Steelers, I preach this a lot. I don't think, we see so many teams like in free agency, pay running backs those like dumb contracts, in my opinion. We saw with like Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon, he kind of screwed himself over. Talked about that a little bit. But, with running backs, I feel like, in terms of the draft, I agree with the quarterback. I think this year, depending on the record, they should go after a quarterback. If they're outside of the top 15 somehow, some way, I don't think they go quarterback in the first round. I think they go another position, maybe O-line or another defensive position, and then wait until the next year to go quarterback. We'll see what happens. But in terms of running back, I think they should go for a running back who in the later round, but not of the same physicality as James Conner, because obviously that type of running back build hasn't worked for the Steelers offense, and it doesn't seem like it's going to work. I think they go for someone in the later rounds who has the versatility like a Kamara, like a McCaffrey. Not saying that like someone in those later rounds will be as the same talent as those guys, but, just someone who has like that versatility to their game. And then I think, again, O-line, I preach this all the time on the show. O-line is what allows a rebuilding team to be successful. If you build your O-line through the draft, we saw it with the Cowboys. We saw it with, the Saints. We see it with the Eagles. They rebuilt their O-line. We saw it with there's some other teams. I can't
the Colts have been doing that with
The Colts.
Quentin Nelson. That should help.
Yeah, the Colts. We just see those teams with the really good O-lines are always a success. So I think getting a quarterback if you guys are top 10, and then building the O-line throughout the draft, and then getting a running back in later rounds, seeing who works out, because, there's always those hidden gems. I think that's really the move for them. Their defense, in my opinion, is I would say top 7 defense right now. They got some really good pieces. Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, Devin Bush is another one to name. So Cam Hayward. So, just, Stephon Tuitt, another guy. They got a lot of really good guys on that defense. So I think, they need to shy away from the defensive side of the ball, at least in the draft. And then in the draft, really just focus a lot on the offense. And then, maybe in free agency, touch a bit on the defense. If there's a really big, talented wide receiver, go after that guy. But don't overpay him, but go after him. And, I think, in terms of their wide receivers, though, with their young guys, I think Claypool, is going to be someone really good for them. I've preached that in our draft analysis. He's a guy that I really like. And then I think, Deontay Johnson, he could be a serviceable like slot or maybe number 2. Juju, I just have no idea. I got to see what he does this season, honestly. But, we'll see with Juju. He's really just not a number 1. They just really need that true like number 1 wide receiver and talent and star-studded running back, basically.
Yeah, I could definitely see the quarterback in the draft. I think that's a good idea. And I would agree with you that most of those positions you want to shy away from spending too heavily in free agency. I would love to see them target, after they draft a quarterback, some kind of veteran presence at wide receiver, maybe 1 or 2 guys that actually are established in the NFL, to get that quarterback as acclimated as possible. That's the one position where there could be a really pretty significant learning curve coming out of the draft, and those guys tend to be really hit or miss. The last few years, seeing guys bust like Corey Davis, John Ross, those kind of guys. You can't really get guaranteed production from anyone, even in the first round, from wide receiver in the draft, at least in recent years. So I would say that that's a position that I would want to see them target in free agency. And then, like you said, with the running backs, definitely a later round kind of thing. You don't want to waste draft capital on running backs when you're trying to sustain a top defense, and you're trying to build up the O-line, the quarterback, the wide receivers. Going running back early, not the move. I think teams have gotten better with that. I don't think that teams that are in bad positions have really been going after the running backs. You know, the guys that the teams that we've seen go after running backs in the first round have been teams like the Chiefs with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and just teams like that that are already at the top. So I wouldn't expect the Steelers to do that, but that's something that could definitely have the potential to derail the rebuild and push it back a few years.
It would be interesting if they went a wide receiver first round, even though wide receivers have been going. It wasn't really. It was like 6 wide receivers taken in the first round in
Yep.
this year's draft.
Mhm.
But again, I agree. I think a veteran wide receiver quality, even though Steelers have had zero luck with that in recent years. And the last before Fitzpatrick, the biggest free agent acquisition Steelers had was probably Jerome Bettis. They just don't do free agents.
Yeah.
So I'm still pushing for a quarterback, except, and I mentioned this to Ryan earlier, and it was just T.J. Barrett.
JT Barrett. We
Oh,
talked about
JT.
this.
Oh,
Yeah.
the Watt brothers are on my brain. I'm sorry. I'm very intrigued by him again. The Saints and the I want to say the Saints and Seahawks really didn't give him no chance to even do in a practice squad for their teams, and he's still 25, and he did obviously very well at Ohio State. I'd be very interested to see if he can surpass Rudolph and Hodges and even Paxton Lynch, and come in there and be a very surprise running type of quarterback that they haven't had in recent years. Somebody that can really lead with his legs and open up that offense a little, and maybe give them a year or two, like Ryan mentioned, maybe not draft a quarterback for that first year and really focus on offensive line, maybe get another couple big stud defenders, and then grab a quarterback in the second round pick, somebody big. But I'm hoping something has to happen to surprise me again beyond that 6 or 7 wins I'm expecting.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
with JT Barrett, like I agree with you. I think he could easily pass Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges, because I think a lot of people also aren't realizing, based off of the Steelers last season, that like if they had Roethlisberger, I feel like last year they would have been like maybe 9-7 or something like that, because if he didn't get hurt, he was still at the time a top 15 quarterback. Now I would put him outside of my top 15 probably, but Mason Rudolph and Hodges were just so like bad for them last year. Like they just were not good. I'm not even gonna like sugarcoat it at all. But if Barrett can like outplay them and bring sort of a new aspect to the Steelers quarterback room, and have that mobility, and just be able to get something done, maybe lead them to like a 7-9, 8-8 season. That would definitely be an interesting thing. Then bring in a rookie quarterback and have him compete with JT Barrett. That would definitely be something interesting. I think a lot of the average fans wouldn't really expect to happen.
Yeah, when I was talking about getting a veteran presence at wide receiver, I just want to clarify. I was talking about like a legit like elite wide receiver, or at least a very good established wide receiver. Adam, you referenced how they've not had good luck with free agents, particularly wide receivers. I think of Dante Moncrief, absolute bust this year. They spent a lot of money on Dante Moncrief, and then they cut him after like 3 weeks or something because he dropped every ball that they passed to him. But yeah, Ryan, I would agree with you too that they need to get steady quarterback play. That's what needs to happen at the end of the day. And I agree. I would love to see JT Barrett come out and just ball out for a couple of years. He doesn't have to be a long-term starting option, but if he can make that offense interesting, if he can bring fans to the games, if he can at least like make that team not terrible as they
Like Jacoby
continue to rebuild.
Brissett.
Yeah, like if Jacoby Brissett is not as exciting at all.
Well,
He's like one
yeah,
of the least exciting quarterbacks to
yeah,
watch. But
yeah, that's
but
true.
but JT Barrett, I would say it'd be a fun thing to watch, and it would make Steelers fans, I think, a little bit happier. I don't know, Adam, you could speak on this. I think it would make Steelers fans a little bit happier as they rebuild, so they don't have to really endure years of just pure suffering.
Yeah, well, the Steelers are again. I can go back to the Bubby Brister years or the Neil O'Donnell years. They were tough to watch, even though Neil O'Donnell did take them to the Super Bowl when they got crushed by the Cowboys. But the Steelers don't go long term bad. They're always right in there, whether it was under Chuck Knox or under I'm sorry, not Chuck Knox, Chuck Noll or Cower or Tomlin. They just don't go long term bad. So, and I could see that continue. It's just something about that team. They don't go long term. So, I have no idea where I was going with that. The excitement of yes, I got you now. So, To have a guy like Barrett or a Claypool really explode on the field and give the Steeler fans something exciting to root for. Something that that we can look and say I can see him in that position with this team 5-6 years, and then watch the team build around him like they did with Roethlisberger and Hines Ward, and that team just kind of solidified. And then they brought in Harrison, and then that team was just perfect, and it was a Super Bowl team. And you saw a little with the AB and Le'Veon and Roethlisberger was nice, but obviously age and money they couldn't keep that team together. So yeah, to find something, one or two or three or four pieces that you can get that foundation, and then everything starts building all the way to that 10-6 or that 11-5 team, and then bam, your playoffs, and then might as well I call it the Eli Manning factor. You never know what's going to happen after that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
talking about bringing excitement for the fans wanting to root for the Steelers. That kind of makes me think of the other side of the ball, basically with the defense. Getting Minka Fitzpatrick, really gave the Steelers fan some excitement for the team. He absolutely bowled out last season. He is a top 3 safety in the league, in my opinion, behind I would say behind like Derwin James and maybe top 2. I'm not too sure, but
Jamal
he's
Adams.
Jamal Adams. Couldn't think of, but yeah, I'd say behind those two, I think he's the 3rd best safety in the league, in my opinion. He's an absolute beast. And then also, with TJ Watt and with Devin Bush, they got some really great, exciting pieces on defense. So I think that really helps. It's really we've emphasized this a lot today, but it's really the offense that they just really need to retool. But talking about how that team doesn't stay bad for long, that kind of makes me think about this is a complete different sport, but the Miami Heat with the LeBron James, the Big Three saga. When LeBron left in 2014, everyone thought that the Heat were going to rebuild, and that just wasn't the case. We weren't, obviously I'm a Heat fan, got the Heat jersey on right now, but we were never a bottom 10 team at any moment, and we were either borderline in the playoffs or we were top 5 in the Eastern Conference. We just never truly rebuilt. And then, they found some way with the limited salary cap to make us a great team this year. And, that's basically it's just the same, like, kind of concept is what I'm trying to say. The team doesn't stay bad for long. And that's pretty much the Steelers, like you said.
Yeah. Coming from a fan of some teams that are long-term bad, I would never wish that on anyone. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. I've been a Raiders fan for my whole life. The Raiders they've been long-term bad for the entire span of my life so far. I think it was the year after I was born was they went to the Super Bowl against the Bucs, and they got smashed in that Super Bowl by John Gruden, who they actually had gotten rid of before. Now they brought him back more recently. But they have found no success. I think they had one season above 10 wins my whole life. And then I'm also a Knicks fan, and the Knicks have been long-term bad for, again, pretty much my whole life. So, I mean, I wish that a football team that I was a fan of could be something like the Steelers, where they're actually capable of rebuilding. Because like we just talked about, it always seems like on paper you can rebuild from somewhere. It seems like there should be a plan, like logically, okay, the Steelers can rebuild by getting a quarterback in next year's draft, and then by building up the offensive line and by getting a couple veteran presence at wide receiver, and then they'll be right back in the hunt again. But with some teams, they just can't execute on that, even though everyone sees it. Everyone besides the ownership and the GM can see it. Everyone says, okay, for the Raiders to get good, they need to do this and then this and then this, but then they don't do it. So I would hope that the Steelers would actually go for a quarterback. They don't get hung up on Ben Roethlisberger, because what happens – I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. What happens if Ben Roethlisberger plays pretty badly this year, and then he says that he doesn't want to retire and he wants another chance? Do you think the Steelers should hang on to him for 1-2 years? Where do they cut that off?
Well, what I've been hearing is that Roethlisberger's come back for one more year. It's a wait and see, and that's why I keep saying he's not going to survive. And his body, again, I'm talking to you as an older former athlete as well. Your body just doesn't hold up, and I've seen too many players just get too many hits, and they just don't recover well. If Roethlisberger doesn't want to walk away, I can see the Steelers walking away with it. They've done it before. They'll just appreciate it. You've done great stuff for us, but I'm sure another team will look out for you. The Steelers are not going to hold on to a player too long. They didn't hold on to Bradshaw too long. They're not going to hold on to Roethlisberger too long. So, no, I think if he doesn't play well, he'll retire if he does play well, and the Steelers go 7-9 or 6-10 or 5-11. I can see him say, depending on the draft, and then he'll wait the wait and see mentality, and or the Gronkowski mentality. We'll wait and see if I want to come back
Yeah.
into the. And that's what probably what happened. That's my guess based on what I've been reading.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of like how Nate, you asked for our thoughts. I think of the situation with the Giants and Eli Manning. Pretty much, I'm a diehard Giants fan. I got all love for Eli, but when we after that playoff appearance, with when we got destroyed by the Packers, people at least after the season after that playoff appearance, when we were just like really bad, when everyone thought we were going to be really good, people or fans were pretty much pushing ownership and the GM to pick a quarterback. Because Eli Manning getting up there in age, he is mediocre at best now, and we need to start rebuilding. And that just wasn't the case. We pretty much wasted about 2 years with just not being great and just completely ignoring the fact that Eli Manning is getting up there in age and we need to pick a quarterback in the draft. And I think that could be, I don't think it will, but that can be a possible situation with the Steelers. Ben Ross, they could just completely ignore the fact that Ben Roethlisberger is getting old and they need to pick a quarterback and just stick with him for basically like 2-3 years and waste the use of some of these players. And just that's just basically all I'm trying to say is I could see that being a situation. I don't think it will be a situation, but I think if Roethlisberger plays well this year, I just think pretty much I think he should be done after this year, regardless of like how well he plays or not. I think this is basically, Roethlisberger's farewell tour, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I
So
totally agree with that.
go ahead. Yeah. All right. So, I think that's a good place to wrap this one up for today. Great talking with you, Adam, about the Steelers and your passion for them. You got anything else you want to say before we sign off?
I got to say, as I said, this is a big thrill. I am beyond proud of you two and what you've accomplished in such a short period of time. You're talking about topics and a sport that is so ingrained in American youth and passion, and you guys are now embracing that and sharing your knowledge and your talk and your honesty and your companionship with everybody else. And it's such a huge thrill to see it, and I'm excited about the ride. I'm excited to continue to follow you guys. I'll be listening all the time. Thank you very much again. It was a great time, and I'm wishing you guys only the best.
Hey,
Yeah,
thank you.
and
Very
thank you
much
for
appreciated.
sending out the pigeon carriers. Sending our podcast all over the place. I think we could hear the pigeons a little bit towards the beginning of the episode.
Oh, they don't
Dispersing
shut
from
up
your
in our
area.
backyard, man. It's crazy. They don't shut up. It's
Hey,
annoying.
they're spreading the message, quarantine football.
They are. Indeed, they are. But definitely a great episode today. Before we sign off, guys, make sure you follow us on Instagram at QF_Nate and Ryan, and follow us on Twitter at QF_NNR. And I want to let everyone know that we now have a YouTube channel. If you look up Quarantine Football Talk with Nate and Ryan, you'll be able to check out our YouTube channel on that. We're going to be posting our interviews on that as well, but with video this time, so you guys can actually see our lovely faces. So
Face
make sure
reveal.
make sure you guys subscribe on that, like our videos, and comment. It'll be much appreciated. And make sure you subscribe on Apple, follow on Spotify. Just subscribe or follow on whatever platform you use. It'll be much appreciated, so you can stay up to date on all of our episodes. And that'll be it for today, guys. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.